Majesty, the fringe scouts of the Eastern Reach have confirmed the discovery of a new spacefaring species. They have crossed the threshold into interstellar travel and possess working warp drives. The lower-tier scholar remained bowed deeply before the central hololith as the projection flickered to life, casting a gentle glow across the chamber floor. It displayed a vibrant blue and green world, accompanied by telemetry readouts of blocky, utilitarian starships forged from heavy alloys and retrofitted with primitive fusion engines. "They call themselves humans," the scholar continued. "Our remote scans indicate no latent psychic signature. They are entirely dark to the ether." A low murmur of discussion rippled through the upper tiers. The High Court of the Dominion did not assemble for trivial matters. Beneath the soaring, pearlescent vaults of the Grand Assembly Hall on Aethelgard, thousands of delegates from across the galaxy sat in designated stations. There were the avian scriptorians, whose crystalline feathers hummed with stored data. The hulking, silicon-based Vaughn, whose tectonic rumble passed for speech, and hundreds of other spacefaring races, each occupying their rightful place in the galactic hierarchy. Above them all, suspended on a platform of solid light, sat the Ascendancy. They were the sovereign psychics who ruled the vast dominion, a race elegant and slender, with skin the color of twilight and eyes that burned like dying stars. They carried no weapons, maintained no vast standing armies in the hall, and required no displays of physical force. They did not need to. In the dark, violent dawn of galactic history, the Ascendancy had forged their empire in blood. They had broken the warrior clans of the Vaughn with a thought, turning armies against their own commanders, and swept through star systems without detonating a single payload. Over millennia, however, brutal conquest had given way to an effortless, serene feudalism. The Ascendancy ruled much like an ancient high king over a vast realm of dukes and barons. They were not gratuitous tyrants. They managed trade, settled territorial disputes, and kept the peace. The galaxy accepted them as natural rulers. Their authority was rarely questioned, not because rebellion was impossible, but because there was simply no reason to rebel. The galaxy prospered under their rule, and the Ascendancy had long since become less an occupying power than the institution around which galactic civilization was organized. High Monarch Valerius sat at the apex of the levitating dais, his mind casually sweeping over the emotional tides of the assembly below. "They have achieved warp capability without guidance," Valerius spoke, his voice echoing not through the room's acoustic dampeners, but directly inside the minds of every delegate present. The sensation was warm, rich, and unmistakably absolute. "That demonstrates commendable resolve. The Dominion welcomes all who reach the stars, provided they understand the order of things." Valerius turned his gaze to Envoy Xylar, one of the Ascendancy's finest diplomats. Xylar possessed an unusually disciplined mind and an extraordinary talent for understanding other species. He had spent centuries settling disputes, easing diplomatic tensions, and helping governments find common ground long before disagreements could become conflicts. "Xylar," the High Monarch commanded, "prepare a royal diplomatic vessel. You will make first contact with these humans. Greet them warmly, show them the vastness of the galaxy they have just entered, and instruct them on the traditions and hierarchy of the Dominion." Xylar bowed low, his mind projecting absolute obedience and quiet confidence. "It shall be done, Your Majesty. I will greet them properly, introduce them to the Dominion, and help them find their place within the galactic community. Do not overwhelm them unnecessarily," Valerius cautioned gently. "They are new to our part of the galaxy. Let them see how our civilization is organized. Introduce them to our traditions, and give them time to understand the place they have entered. A first meeting should leave them curious about their new neighbors, not anxious about them." As the assembly hall echoed with the serene, harmonious thoughts of thousands of loyal subjects, Xylar departed for the spires to ready his flagship. He anticipated a routine assignment, a quick demonstration of the Mindcraft, a brief awe-inspiring display of galactic scale, and a sign-off on the Imperial Charter. He had no reason to suspect that the silent dark of the human mind was not an empty room waiting to be opened, but a locked vault. The United Earth Orbital Assembly in Geneva looked less like a citadel of visionary statecraft and more like a high-stakes daycare where someone had replaced the apple juice with espresso. Technically, humanity had known they weren't alone for nearly 2 decades. The moment the first experimental Alcubierre drive had folded space-time out near Jupiter, sensor arrays had lit up like cheap holiday decorations. The galaxy was practically humming with traffic. Deep space telemetry had pinged metal hulks near Orion, energetic signatures skimming around Alpha Centauri, and what looked suspiciously like a cosmic toll booth orbiting a brown dwarf 3 light-years out. Naturally, humanity's official, top-level response to this monumental revelation had been pure, concentrated caution. Do not touch anything, do not transmit anything, and pretend we are an illiterate ball of dirt until we figure out if they eat carbon-based bipeds. Caution had worked perfectly well, right up until a sleek, iridescent, needle-shaped vessel dropped out of superluminal transit directly beyond lunar orbit and transmitted a perfectly polite, translated message. Greetings, inhabitants of Earth. We come in peace. Humanity had spent nearly 2 decades tiptoeing around the cosmos to avoid attracting attention and had failed catastrophically. Worse, whoever wrote their greeting script had clearly never consulted Earth's media archives. To the alien diplomats, it was an ancient formal declaration of goodwill. To approximately 4 billion movie-literate humans, it was the single most untrustworthy phrase in the history of the universe. Within 20 seconds of the broadcast hitting civilian networks, half the global population was immediately convinced that "We come in peace" was the universal cosmic code for "We are going to blow up the White House with a giant blue laser and enslave your species to work in our space salt mines." The global consensus didn't view it as an olive branch. They viewed it as a cinematic jump scare. Inside the International Council chamber, the debate was loud, chaotic, and aggressively human. The public reaction is an unmitigated dumpster fire, Mr. President Director Vance sighed, rubbing his temples hard enough to leave indentations. The internet didn't just break, it detonated. We've got a dozen doomsday cults setting up camp in the Mojave, half of them claiming this confirms the pyramids were landing pads, the moon landing was faked, and that the Galactic Federation is here to personally audit the Illuminati. Meanwhile, social media is trending a global boycott. President Whitmore gave a thoroughly confused look. A boycott? About what? Vance let out a slow, defeated sigh. We're not entirely sure. They haven't decided what they're boycotting yet. The president buried his face in his hands, and this, gentlemen, is why we hide things from people. Every single time, a marm bod. Doesn't matter, Vance continued, scrolling through his tablet. The internet has already decided what happened. We've got people claiming the government has known about extraterrestrials since Roswell, others insisting the whole thing is a hoax, and several million people arguing that the aliens aren't even real and the entire thing is a government fabrication designed to justify new taxes. President Whitmore chuckled. To be fair, we've falsified things for taxes before. Can't blame them for being suspicious. A low, amused chuckle cut through the panic. All right, President Whitmore said, setting his tablet down. We've established that the public has collectively lost its mind. What do we actually know about the people who just arrived? The chamber instantly descended into a fresh wave of anxious murmuring as the council members, having momentarily forgotten the terrifying reality of the actual alien ship while debating internet drama, began tossing around half-baked rumors and doomsday theories with rising panic. At the far end of the mahogany table sat Ambassador Ronald Croft. He was in his late 50s, possessing the unflappable demeanor of a man who had spent 3 decades negotiating fishing boundaries between nuclear-armed superpowers. He took a slow sip from the same battered mug he'd apparently been carrying from office to office for years, and leveled a steady gaze at the frantic assembly. "Relax, everyone," Croft said, his gravelly voice instantly puncturing the room's hysteria. "They sent one ship. No battle fleet, no planetary glassing lasers warming up on the moon's dark side. It's a standard diplomatic greeting. They're bringing a fruit basket, metaphorically speaking. We just need to ensure we don't accidentally sneeze on their dignitaries or insult their ancestors. Which is precisely why you're leading the delegation, Ronald, the president declared. You're the man who talked 3 nuclear-armed breakaway states into signing a disarmament pact over cold pizza, resolved the Eurasian resource crisis on 2 hours of sleep, and drafted a trade treaty so ironclad that 2 rival dictators ended up tearfully hugging in the hotel lobby. If anyone can keep Earth from being turned into cosmic strip mine slag by an alien aristocrat, it's you. You depart for the lunar neutral station in 3 hours. Delightful, Croft muttered dryly. I'll make sure to put on my good tie, the one without the mustard stain. 45 minutes later, Croft was striding down the gleaming corridor of the diplomatic staging hangar, followed closely by a young man who looked like he was about to vibrate straight through the floor tiles. Garth Hogger, Ronald's newly assigned administrative assistant, was 27, held double master's degrees in theoretical xenolinguistics and astrophysics, and was, by every known medical definition, an unrepentant terminal nerd. He had luggage bags under his eyes that could be checked as carry-on. "Nah, many beef. Sir, I've reviewed the protocols," Garth babbled, clutching a towering, precarious stack of physical data slates against his chest, like holy scriptures. "And I have to emphasize, facial expressions are a minefield. What if showing our teeth by smiling is interpreted as an evolutionary display of predatory cannibalism, like in the claws of Vega 9? What if handshakes are viewed as an ancient declaration of blood feud? What if breathing too loudly matches the mating call of a giant predatory space wasp, like in Nebula Horrors 4? Croft didn't break stride. "Garth, yes, sir? Have you slept at all in the last 48 hours? Sleep is an inefficient use of biological resources when the literal extraterrestrial hegemon is knocking on our front door, sir." Garth pushed his oversized, constantly slipping glasses up his nose. "I've watched 37 classic First Contact movies over the weekend. I have prepared a flowchart. If they offer us a book titled To Serve Man, we run. If they communicate in 5 musical tones, I brought a vintage synthesizer. And if they pull out any metallic cylinders resembling probes, I am legally invoking workplace safety laws to request you go first because of seniority." Croft stopped, turning to look at his assistant with the weary affection of a father dealing with a toddler hopped up on sugar. "Garth, this isn't a midnight sci-fi marathon. It's diplomacy. We walk in, we introduce ourselves as the United Earth Government. We smile, we nod through whatever galactic timeshare pitch they give us, and we try very hard not to look like we're terrified of their shiny toys." Right, Garth nodded quickly, swallowing hard. "Be professional. Don't mention pop culture. Don't ask if they have lightsabers. Got it." Garth frantically sniffed his sleeve, grumbling under his breath. "I just think we should be prepared for telepathic brainwashing, sir. It's always mind control in the 3rd act." "If they could read our minds, Garth," Croft chuckled, strapping himself into the shuttle's leather harness, "they would have turned the ship around the second they scanned our internet forums. Now sit down, take a breath, and let's go meet the neighbors." The landing pad at the lunar neutral station was bathed in the harsh, unfiltered glare of the sun. Outside the atmospheric containment dome, space stretched endlessly, but inside, the air was thick with the scent of recycled ozone and the palpable, sweaty dread of 24 human diplomats in ill-fitting formal wear. Then, the sky parted without a sound. The alien vessel descended not with the roar of thrusters or the blast of chemical exhaust, but with an eerie, frictionless grace. It was shaped like a teardrop, carved from a single piece of liquid pearl, its surface shifting through iridescent shades of violet, silver, and gold as it adjusted to the station's gravity field. "Sweet mother of orbital mechanics," Garth whispered, his jaw hitting the lunar deck. He was frantically trying to record telemetry with one hand while dropping his stylus with the other. Look at those inertia dampeners. That hull is seamless. No rivets, no heat tiles, not even an exhaust port. It's like a flying piece of jewelry. I wonder if they have bumper stickers. Croft stood beside him, with his hands clasped casually behind his back. Internally, his heart was playing a frantic drum solo against his ribs, but decades of staring down hostile politicians kept his expression carved from weathered granite. "Close your mouth, Garth," Croft murmured softly without moving his lips. "You're catching space flies." The vessel settled onto the landing pad with a whisper-soft sigh of displaced air. For a few long seconds, nothing happened. Then, a seam along the hull dissolved, melting away into an open entryway lined with shimmering blue light. A squad of tall reptilian honor guards stepped out first. They were clad in ornate, flowing ceremonial armor, wrought from dark bronze and scale weave, carrying tall staves that crackled with contained energy. Without uttering a syllable, two of the guards unrolled a glowing woven runner made of spun crystalline threads directly over the human's pre-laid, slightly faded red carpet, a silent, petty flex of diplomatic superiority that Croft couldn't help but inwardly chuckle at. Following them were various extraterrestrial retainers, a pair of broad, four-armed scribes carrying holographic slates, and a small flock of avian courtiers whose feathered mantles rustled with quiet deference. The entire human welcoming party watched the procession in stunned, wide-eyed bewilderment. Croft, Garth, the security detail, and even the lone embedded news anchor, whose broadcast cameraman was frantically adjusting his focal lenses with trembling hands, had naturally assumed they were meeting a single alien race. Seeing an entire biological zoo of wildly distinct species marching out of a single vessel sent a collective ripple of awe through the human delegation. Garth looked like a kid who had just been handed the keys to a toy store, his jaw hanging so slack it threatened to disconnect entirely. Finally, the main dignitary stepped into view. He was entirely unlike his entourage, tall, impossibly slender, and possessing skin the shade of an approaching thunderstorm. Envoy Xylar moved with an effortless, regal authority. His glowing star-like eyes scanned the human delegation, radiating the ancient, unshakable confidence of a species that had never encountered an equal, let alone a master. "Sir, he's the only one of his kind in the whole group," Garth hissed under his breath, nudging Croft's elbow aggressively. Classic feudal structure, high nobility surrounded by vassal species. Look at that posture. Zero flinch, total apex predator psychology. He's basically galactic royalty. Should we bow? Should I get a towel? "Stand still, Garth," Croft murmured, stepping smoothly forward. "And do not bring a towel." Croft walked across the overlapping carpets, extending his hand in the universal human gesture of greeting. "Envoy of the Dominion, on behalf of the United Earth Government and all of humanity, I welcome you to—" Xylar didn't wait for the translation protocols to finish. To the Ascendancy diplomat, spoken words were crude, clumsy tools meant for beasts and lower castes. True order was established from the mind down. To swiftly establish the Dominion's benevolent dominance, Xylar decided that a gentle demonstration would be more appropriate than a lengthy verbal introduction. He casually cast a wide, sweeping psychic net. He reached out with his formidable consciousness to slip into every single human mind on the platform simultaneously. Croft, Garth, the security guards, the aides, and the trembling camera crew, intending to project a breathtaking vision of the Ascendancy's imperial glory directly into their collective awareness. He bypassed humans' non-existent psychic shields and thrust his mind deep into the human brain, and instantly the universe tore in half. Xylar's smooth, imperious stride snapped to a violent halt. His glowing eyes went wide, not with majesty, but with sheer, unadulterated terror. A high-pitched, strangled shriek tore out of Xylar's throat. His pale twilight skin flushed an alarming shade of blotchy purple. He convulsed violently, his arms flailing like a marionette with severed strings, before his knees buckled and he slammed face-first onto his own glowing crystalline carpet, twitching and foaming faintly at the mouth. Dead, horrific silence gripped the landing pad for one agonizing second. Then, absolute bedlam erupted. The reptilian guards raised their crackling staves, shouting harsh, guttural alarms as they scrambled in utter confusion, completely unsure whether to shoot the floor, the ceiling, or the humans. The avian scribes squawked hysterically, flapping their wings, shedding feathers, and scattering holographic scrolls in all directions. Padajuna. Across the floor, the human security team drew their sidearms, shouting over each other, while the diplomatic aides scrambled backward like bowling pins. "Oh, sweet Mother of Mary, it's happening," Garth shrieked, clutching his face in total hysterics. "It's War of the Worlds. He's dying of human germs. We bioweaponed the Space King in 5 seconds flat." First contact had lasted precisely 42 seconds, Croft thought in pure misery, and we've already assassinated the galaxy's emperor. "Nobody shoot, put those damn guns away," Croft bellowed. He lurched forward to render aid, but a pair of reptilian honor guards instantly crossed their crackling bronze staves before his chest, blocking his path with a wall of violent sparks and a chorus of guttural warning hisses. The reptilian honor guards hoisted Xylar's limp, twitching frame onto an anti-gravity stretcher, barking panicked orders as they beat a frantic retreat up the boarding ramp. The shimmering hatch sealed shut with a sharp hiss, leaving the human delegation stranded on the landing pad in bewildered, terrified isolation. Inside the vessel, he was rushed directly into a specialized medical sanctum equipped with neuro-stabilizing pods designed exclusively for Ascendancy physiology, where the atmospheric stabilizers immediately hissed to life. Xylar gasped, bolting upright on the biobed like a corpse struck by lightning. His star-like eyes darted frantically around the room, dilated in pure, primitive horror. His chest heaved in ragged spasms, twilight skin beaded with cold, silver sweat. Entire medical staff froze. In recorded galactic history, none of the vassal races had ever seen an Ascendancy noble exhibit fear. They were beings of sublime, untouchable serenity. To see an Ascendancy master cowering, trembling, and hyperventilating was like watching the laws of physics unravel. Valen, a four-eyed Asheri physician whose delicate blue tendrils fluttered with anxiety, cautiously stepped forward with a neuroscanner. "Lord Xylar, by the prime spark, what happened? Was it a targeted bioweapon, a neurotoxin in the lunar atmosphere?" He stared blankly at his trembling hands, clutching his head as if still trying to scoop out the residual psychic fallout. He had touched billions of alien minds in his centuries of service, but humanity was a catastrophic anomaly, a maelstrom of roaring contradictions, existential dread, screaming background music, and primal drive packed into a biological skull, with zero insulation. He didn't speak. He couldn't even risk radiating a telepathic ripple, terrified of catching even an echo of the lunatic noise from outside. Meanwhile, back on Earth, 60 seconds of broadcast had set civilization on fire. Though the lunar station's public communications officer had frantically yanked out cables, cutting the live feed 30 seconds after Xylar hit the carpet, the damage was already global. The clip of the alien overlord collapsing in hysterical spasms had been downloaded, remixed, and shared across billions of devices. The global internet detonated into pure, unfiltered comedy, where any sensible civilization might have contemplated the grim geopolitical ramifications of an incapacitated alien monarch. Humanity naturally chose to turn the entire catastrophe into a global meme contest, because if humanity excelled at anything in the face of monumental cosmic terror, it was ruthlessly turning it into a joke. Conspiracy boards instantly declared Croft an unstoppable psychic warlord, spawning millions of memes labeling him the apex handshaker. Street vendors in Times Square were already hawking t-shirts that read, "I went to Earth, and all I got was a severe seizure." Ultra-nationalist groups staged parades chanting about humanity's invisible bio-supremacy, while the Mojave doomsday cults hastily updated their flyers, claiming that humanity possessed a divine spiritual firewall capable of smiting false space emperors on sight. Stock markets in Tokyo and London experienced a brief manic surge on the assumption that Earth was officially too dangerous to be taxed. Back on the flagship, Xylar spent 20 agonizing minutes using every ancient meditation technique he knew to purge the ringing psychic static from his frontal lobes. He swung his long legs over the side of the medical slab and took a deep, deliberate breath of physical air. Then he parted his lips. Where are the humans? The sound of his vocal cords vibrating in the open air was raspy, dry, and shocking. The Ashari doctor and the reptilian guards actually jumped. Not a single crew member had ever heard an Ascendancy dignitary speak aloud with their mouth. To them, vocal cords were an anatomical vestige meant for lower beasts. They are outside the airlock, my lord, Dr. Valen stammered, bowing low. Waiting at the perimeter. Ambassador Croft refused to leave the pad until your status was confirmed. Xylar smoothed his ornate ceremonial robes with trembling hands. Prepare my honor guard. We will continue the diplomatic conference as planned. My lord, your neural stability. We proceed, Xylar croaked out with quiet, terrifying finality. He clamped his psychic aura down into a dense, impenetrable lockdown, resolving never to project a single telepathic particle near a human ever again. When ship's hatch dissolved open once more, Ambassador Croft was still pacing. In fact, Croft had paced back and forth over the exact same 10-foot stretch of the glowing crystalline runner so many times in sheer anxiety that the fine alien threads were visibly scuffed, frayed, and covered in grey lunar dust. Beside him, Garth was holding an emergency paper bag over his mouth, taking deep, rattling breaths. Seeing the alien diplomat walk out upright, Croft practically lunged forward, nearly tripping over the scuffed carpet in his rush. Your Excellency, holy smokes, are you all right? Croft blurted, frantically looking the alien up and down. We have 3 trauma units, 2 defib kits, and a priest on standby. If it was the air filters, we can sue the contractor right now. Garth here was about to try mouth-to-mouth, and believe me, nobody wants that. Xylar stiffened, his mechanical collar translator buzzing as he forced his vocal cords to move. It is quite all right, Ambassador. A temporary, atmospheric adjustment glitch. Let us proceed. What followed was the most absurd, sweat-drenched diplomatic summit in the history of the Milky Way. For 45 minutes inside the lunar conference room, Croft delivered standard bureaucratic pleasantries while nervously offering Xylar bottled water and packaged shortbread cookies. Garth sat rigidly beside him, furiously clicking a ballpoint pen until Croft slapped his hand away. Across the table, Xylar sat as stiff as a marble statue, strictly using his vocal translator and keeping his eyes fixed entirely on Croft's necktie, absolutely terrified that making direct eye contact might accidentally open a telepathic window to whatever eldritch madness lurked behind Croft's calm smile. While Croft kept subtly glancing down to double-check whether he had failed his own promise and actually put on the tie with the dried mustard stain after all. Whenever Croft cleared his throat or adjusted his coffee mug, Xylar subtly leaned back 6 inches, sweating profusely beneath his high collar. They signed the introductory non-aggression protocols, exchanged symbolic data crystals containing star charts, and shook hands, a brief physical contact during which Xylar clenched his jaw so hard his teeth nearly cracked, bracing for an impact that thankfully remained purely physical. Within 12 minutes of concluding the paperwork, the Ascendancy vessel fired its inertial dampeners, skipped standard departure clearances, and rocketed out of lunar orbit at maximum sublight speed, vanishing into superluminal warp so violently that it rattled the station's coffee cups. Well, Croft remarked, adjusting his tie as he watched the flash of warp light fade in the sky. I think that went rather smoothly. Garth slowly lowered his trembling data slates, blinking in disbelief. Sir, I've seen City Council zoning debates on Earth drag on for 3 weeks over a sidewalk permit. That was a multi-species interstellar treaty summit, and it wrapped up in under an hour. He stared at the empty sky. They broke the sound barrier inside the docking lane. I'm pretty sure they just ditched us. Throughout the entire 3-day journey back to the imperial capital on Ethelgard, Envoy Xylar's crew observed behavior that was, by every known standard, completely unprecedented. He refused to initiate a single telepathic transmission, communicating strictly through spoken words, a crude method his staff had never once heard him resort to in decades of service. His posture remained coiled and uncharacteristically tense, his hands clasped firmly behind his back as he stared through the viewport into hyperspace with dark, restless eyes. Every stiff movement, every guarded syllable, and his total severance from the ship's psychic core left his entire retinue whispering in hushed, bewildered alarm. The Grand Assembly Hall on Ethelgard was completely sealed. For the first time in 10,000 years, every vassal race, scribe and guard had been dismissed from the chamber. Only the pure-blooded members of the Ascendancy sat beneath the pearlescent domes, their glowing eyes fixed upon Envoy Xylar. Xylar stood at the center of the dais, looking hollow, exhausted, and visibly aged. For the past 20 minutes, he had used crude, spoken acoustic syllables to describe what had occurred on the moon. A ripple of sheer disbelief surged through the psychic collective. "Absurd," scoffed High Counselor Vale, his mental voice ringing with sharp indignation. "You claim a species with no psychic architecture, a race of flesh-bound bipeds who still rely on vocal cords, brought an Ascendancy master to his knees? A mind without telepathic discipline is merely an empty vessel. It cannot harm an ocean, but is not an empty vessel," Xylar whispered aloud, his voice trembling as he refused to open his telepathic channel. "It is not empty at all. It is chaos incarnate. Their consciousness is a roaring vortex of unbuffered emotion, evolutionary madness, irrational fears, and sheer sensory overload. They do not maintain mental walls because they live inside a furnace every waking second." A haughty sneer crossed Vale's features. "You have been compromised by planetary toxins, Xylar. Open your mind. Let us inspect the memory ourselves." "Do not," Xylar warned, stepping back in genuine terror. "I beg of you, do not touch that memory." Ignoring the plea, Counselor Vale and 3 Elder Masters immediately reached out with powerful telepathic probes, plunging directly into Xylar's temporal lobes to pull the raw recording of his contact with Ronald Croft. The reaction was instantaneous and catastrophic. Vale and the Elder Masters hadn't just tapped into a memory. They had effectively yeeted themselves out of an airplane into a Category 5 hurricane with a cocktail umbrella for a parachute, instantly getting sucked into the high-voltage chaos of the human collective psyche. First came Ronald Croft's consciousness, a labyrinth of 58 years of hard-boiled survival, weary pragmatism, and sheer stubborn willpower. The Ascendancy Masters found themselves slammed with the crushing weight of Croft's internal monologue. 40 years of complex multilateral treaty clauses, 30-year-old fishing boundary disputes, vivid recollections of cold instant coffee, a dull ache in his lower back, and the relentless looping memory of an excruciatingly catchy 80s pop song he hadn't heard in 2 decades. Layered right beneath his composed smile was an active, simmering calculation that surviving this historic treaty meant finally making it back to Earth for Friday night poker and cheap beers with friends. A constant, nagging dread that Garth was definitely going to say something mortifyingly embarrassing alongside a feral primate fight-or-flight adrenaline surge that Croft was ruthlessly suppressing through pure, unyielding stubbornness. And then the memory cut to Garth abruptly. Garth's brain was a blazing super collider of pure existential panic. The alien masters were instantly assaulted by 37 different apocalyptic science fiction movie plots, firing all at once, chaotic mathematical proofs for theoretical warp field drift, screaming hypotheticals about giant predatory space wasps, crushing anxiety over unpaid college loans, 24-character Wi-Fi passwords, and a deafening looping internal scream. "We are all going to die. Don't look into their eyes. Are they probing us right now?" Worse, there were no barriers. In the heads of these hairless bipeds, logic, terror, mundane grocery lists, childhood embarrassments, and raw survival fury lived in the exact same room, shrieking over each other every single second of the day. When that was multiplied across the entire human delegation, the jittery security guards running tactical breach protocols, the camera crew fretting over focal lighting, and the aides mentally calculating their overtime pay, the psychic blast was catastrophic. It was like tuning a receiver to every frequency across the galaxy at the exact same instant, creating a dense, shrieking wall of white-hot static. The Ascendancy masters had assumed they were casually stepping into a passive recollection, but the moment they breached the surface, it felt as though someone had slammed a vault door behind them, melted the lock, and thrown the entire frame away, trapping their consciousness inside a cage of mortal madness. Vale's eyes rolled violently into the back of his head. He let out a strangled shriek of pure sensory agony, his limbs locking rigidly before he collapsed backward off his levitating seat. Beside him, the three elder masters seized, clutching their temples as silver psychic fluid trickled from their ears. They writhed across the pristine floor, completely shattered by the phantom onslaught of mortgage anxiety, catchy 80s boy band choruses, existential terror, forgotten passwords, and raw primal fight-or-flight instincts. The rest of the assembly went utterly silent in paralyzed horror. For millennia, the Ascendancy had ruled the cosmos unchallenged. Their psychic supremacy had made them gods among mortals. Yet here, in their sacred hall, 4 of their most revered elders were currently occupying the floor in various states of neurological distress simply from touching the memory of a few ordinary humans. Panic, raw and uncoordinated, shattered their pristine mental discipline. "They are a biological anomaly," one counselor cried in a frantic telepathic pulse. "They are psychic bioweapons. If an untrained diplomat can shatter a master, what happens if their entire species turns their eyes toward the stars? We must sterilize their world." Another shouted, the dark impulse spreading quickly across the terrified chamber. "Deploy the planetary lances, glass their continents before they learn to project that madness across the hyperlanes." Choruses of desperate agreement rippled through the hall as the once tranquil rulers succumbed to fear. Enough! A mental command hit the chamber like the strike of an anvil. High Monarch Valerius rose slowly from his throne of light. His presence was vast, ancient, and deeply anchored. He looked down at the twitching elders, then at Xylar, and finally out across the trembling court. "We have ruled this galaxy for eons, not because we destroy what we do not understand, but because we bring order to chaos," Valerius projected, his mental tone filled with solemn, unshakable wisdom. "You speak of annihilation out of fear, but ask yourselves, did this human attack Xylar? Did their species declare war?" The assembly remained dead silent. "No," Valerius continued softly. "They offered a hand in friendship. They rushed to aid Xylar when he fell. They offered him medical assistance and small baked pastries. They built ships with iron and fire because they had no magic of the mind, and they survived their own inner turbulence without tearing their world apart. A species that can carry that level of internal madness and still choose diplomacy over slaughter possesses a fortitude we cannot comprehend." Wabriving Nunin. The High Monarch looked toward the distant sector containing Sol. "If we attack them, we force them to fight, and a race that thrives inside a psychic storm will not break if we bring war to their doorstep. They will drown us in it. No, we shall honor our treaties. We will grant them trade. We will watch them from afar, and we will never, under any circumstance, attempt to enter their minds again." Light years away, on the blue and green marble called Earth, the sun rose over Geneva. In a sunlit corner of the diplomatic archives, Garth Hogar was happily munching on a jelly donut, surrounded by towering holographic stacks of alien star maps and trade regulations. He adjusted his glasses, humming an off-key tune while comparing galactic feudal bylaws to vintage comic books, completely oblivious to the fact that his boss's morning stress levels had single-handedly saved humanity from an orbital glassing. A few doors down the hall, Ambassador Ronald Croft stood by his office window, sipping black coffee from his favorite chipped mug. He reviewed the latest trade agreements with a steady, practiced eye, wondering idly why the alien dignitaries had been in such a rush to leave after signing the paperwork. Down on the streets below, humanity carried on exactly as it always had. A crowd of enthusiastic futurists gathered in the park to wave sparkly banners at the empty sky. 2 blocks away, a stubborn protest marched with signs reading "Boycott Aliens." In the digital forums, billions argued passionately over whether the aliens were gods, conquerors, or cowards, while street corner kiosks sold out of limited edition bobbleheads of Ambassador Croft and Xylar, looking mildly confused. Humanity was noisy, chaotic, divided, and utterly relentless, living happily inside the storm, perfectly unaware of the quiet peace they had secured among the stars.